It is the latest symbol of America's decline. On social media, passenger cabins on jetliners bound for the United States are mostly empty. Hello, everybody. David Schuster here. Normally, at this time of year, aircraft headed to the United States are packed, but tourism is down dramatically, and international travelers staying away from the United States keep citing one reason: Donald Trump.
I think something really does have to change. I really hope so for the world, actually, not just for me.
When it comes for vacation, I think there's other places I would rather go.
It's dangerous and nobody is safe there anymore to come to America as a tourist.
25-year-old Lukas Sila from Germany was stopped from entering the U.S. after a trip to Mexico with his American girlfriend. He was shackled and held for 16 days before being allowed to return home last month.
I get a lot of questions from people who want to visit America, and I try to help them and tell them my experience.
That's what Germans have heard about America. Australians have also gotten an earful from several cases. One Australian with a working visa was detained and deported on returning to the U.S. from his sister's memorial.
He says U.S. officials called him an epithet and told him Trump is back in town. We're doing things the way we always should have been doing them.
The effect of all of this on people coming to the United States is significant. As The Guardian reports, the number of Europeans traveling to the United States has cratered under Trump. See all of those charts?
Some Dutchmen say, why are you going? You're going to Trump?
New trouble from abroad. There's a sharp decline in international visitors to the U.S., down at least 14% from a year ago.
It's even worse with Canadians.
The overall political climate, I'm a little more content this year just to spend my money in Canada.
Canada accounts for a quarter of all tourism to the United States. Several reports say that Canadian tourism to the U.S. this year is down by 70%. The cumulative effect is huge. According to data from the World Travel and Tourism Council, America is on track to lose $12.5 billion in travel revenue this year, making it the only country out of 184 analyzed that's projected to see tourism dollars decline in 2025. International visitor spending is expected to fall to less than $169 billion by year's end, a 7% drop from 2024 and a staggering 22% decline from tourism pre-pandemic peak in 2019. The WTTC said it could take until 2030 for U.S. tourism to bounce back to pre-COVID numbers. Recently, President Trump was asked about the tourism decline.
On tourism, there's been a steep drop-off in international travel to the United States. It was down 12% last month, down even more from Western Europe. Why do you think that there are fewer people suddenly who want to travel to the United States?
Well, there could be a little, there's a little nationalism there, I guess, perhaps. It's not a big deal.
But it is a big deal to several U.S. states, especially those along the Canadian border. In Kennebunk, Maine, this inn relies on Canadian visitors and has seen bookings vanish.
We're usually almost full with Canadians, and this year we had 2 families.
Summer is not looking any better.
We just feel sad that we're not going to see our friends this year.
The governor of Maine has ordered the placement of these welcome signs in several border towns and is publicly pleading with Canadians to visit.
Just to reinforce the idea that Maine welcomes Canadian visitors, Canadian businesses, Canadian citizens.
In the meantime, Canada is getting some very high-profile public solidarity in its tensions with Donald Trump.
King Charles delivered a rare speech in the Canadian Parliament today, reaffirming that Britain stands with Canada as it navigates a challenging relationship with President Trump.
The King's speech said Canada is facing challenges that are unprecedented in our lifetimes.
Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect. As the anthem reminds us, the true north is indeed strong and free.
And its citizens are putting a noticeable financial squeeze on the United States. Adrian Wright, a Canadian living in Germany with family in the United States, is refusing to travel to America.
What would need to change for you to consider going back to the United States?
I would have to say bye-bye President Trump. I would like to see that he doesn't make it through the next 4 years.
He doesn't make it through the next 4 years. That may sound harsh, but that is the way so many international travelers feel now about Donald Trump. And Trump keeps adding insult to injury. Trump recently spoke about a military missile defense system that could cover the United States and Canada, and said it would cost Canada over $60 billion, but would be free if Canada becomes the 51st U.S. state. Canadians called the choice rude, belittling, and vulgar. In other words, Donald Trump keeps being Donald Trump. And instead of soothing tensions with Canada and the rest of the world, Donald Trump is inflaming them.
We have tariffs, they've been set, and it's going to make our country very rich. The whole world is listening.
Kami Farhadi is the CEO of Starline Tours in Los Angeles. He says the Trump administration's policies have been bad for business.
In the first quarter of this year, we're down about 29 to 30%.
And what are they saying when they cancel?
They don't feel safe, they don't feel welcome.
People in other countries are not coming to the United States the way they used to. You are going to see travel drop. Foreigners saying, we don't like these people. Literally. And I think that that has an economic impact, but has a much broader, more profound impact that has not even been sort of calculated in what's going on here.
I actually went to a wedding over the weekend and there were a couple of Canadians there. So naturally, I asked them about what it was like crossing the border. I think they had driven through the Buffalo, Niagara Falls border crossing. And I personally have crossed the border, that particular border, many times in my life. I've seen Niagara Falls more times than most people probably have. It's always usually an easy crossing, but it can definitely get backed up with traffic. It's good to budget at least a couple of hours for the crossing alone, but this time, this Canadian couple said that they breezed through it in that there weren't nearly as many cars there as they're used to seeing, and they said that talk around their parts was that Canadians just don't want to come here and they don't want to spend their money here anymore. Canadians in particular, they used to vacation here often, both in the American South where they could escape the harsh Canadian winters and in parts of the northern US where they could find a quick, quaint weekend getaway. Now, portions of the country, especially New England, are bracing for a drop in tourism revenue from Canadians specifically.
I am here today to say to Canadians to avoid travel to the United States if at all possible, and to call our government to stand up for our Canadian citizens who are being denied their rights by arbitrary detention in the United States today. The Canada must stand up for our citizens and for the rule of law.
There is, of course, data to support this, though. For one, our own government has noted a decline in overseas traffic into the United States. According to data from the National Travel and Tourism Office, overseas to U.S. travel has declined 11.6% in March compared to the previous year. And according to data from Trivago, the hotel/travel site, the U.S. is seeing fewer bookings than usual from Canada, Japan, Mexico, and Germany. But how significant are these Trivago findings? This is reporting from The Guardian. The company has seen double-digit percentage declines in bookings to the United States from travelers based in Japan, Canada, and Mexico. The latter two countries were the first on Trump's tariff hit list when he announced tariffs of 25% on 1 February. Also, demand among Germans was also down heavily, with hotel bookings in the US showing a single-digit percentage decline. Germany is the largest economy in the EU, which Trump has repeatedly threatened with increased tariffs, most recently saying on Sunday he had paused a 50% tax he intended to introduce next month. Tourism in the US is a $2.6 trillion industry. The businesses that depend on tourism are anticipating what they're calling a Trump slump, which is exactly what it sounds like, but I do love that they're putting his name on it, by the way. And that slump isn't just from fewer people that are coming here. Travelers within the United States are also spending less. And I don't just mean that they're shopping less. There's now more demand for cheaper hotels, with travelers more willing to stay at lower starred hotels in their efforts to pay less overall. As for the UK, travelers from the UK and the US are choosing to vacation domestically due to concern and uncertainty over leaving the country. But booking data now shows that the UK is seeing a 25% year-over-year increase in demand for domestic summer travel travel, with people particularly interested in vacationing in London and Edinburgh. Both of those cities are seeing a near 30% increase in travel demand, but York, Blackpool, and Manchester have also seen boosts. To explain this, Trivago's chief executive Johannes Thomas put it simply, in times of uncertainty, people stay closer to home. And I'll admit that I am a little hesitant to leave the country right now. I don't necessarily think that anything will happen if I do, but the fact is, nobody knows what can or will happen right now. This administration hardly seems to know what it's doing, and it seems incapable of communicating within itself, let alone with the public. Although when I was going through TSA this last time, there is now a fun video that loops of Kristi Noem talking about the real ID or something. I'm not really sure what she was saying because I didn't watch the video long enough to read all the subtitles, but she's definitely made sure that her presence is felt at airport security. Honestly, the video sort of felt like AI, or like in the Harry Potter movies where the pictures move, but I guess that's not really relevant. Anyway, business travel is similarly being affected by the tariffs. This from Politico. Data shared with Politico by London-based Hotel Hub, a platform specialized in the business travel sector, found that bookings in April were down by 26% from a year ago. That comes as the US is seeing a marked deterioration in its reputation. Trump has unleashed a global trade war and is attacking traditional US allies, while social media is filled with stories of travelers being mistreated while trying to enter the country. Hotel Hub's chief commercial officer explained, "There's been a lot of uncertainty around the traditional partnership with the US since the new administration took office, and even more so since the tariff announcements. The Trump tariffs seem to have created an appetite for businesses to look at alternative markets to offer greater stability." How embarrassing for us.